used to do with the things you missed. Now, generally, we have had a lot more music, we've had a lot more singing, we've had a lot more other things going on in between. Now, obviously, you don't need that, but it does uplift the whole thing. And we did it for a reason. If you notice over there, there is no piano. There is no piano because, as far as I'm concerned, the only person that could have or should have played it, we lost in July. Nancy Cochran. So rather than to even bother with it, we just decided to go without it this year. Prayerfully, we'll find someone in the future who can play piano or something. I play a little guitar, but I have quite a lot on my hands already, so there's not a lot of that. But we will work in that area. But when you look at that spot, just remember who used to be there. It's been saddening as well as enlightening as I watch the world. From here, it's a little bit of a relief. We get a little bit of a respite from it. We get to see who we are as we stand here practicing part of what we will do. We don't really know everything we're going to do, and those who say they do, well, whatever. We don't know what we're going to do in that millennium. We know what's going to happen to a degree. But sometimes it's good when you're out of it to look back in the fire and see, wow, there's got to be some things that we can do when we go back into it a little bit better. Like I said, I watched the world dig itself deeper and dig deeper into the hole of distractions that Satan has placed before us, taking our minds away from any thought that we had of Elohim or God or our eternity or any of these things that we're here seeking. We watch television, those who watch television. I don't watch a lot of television. Some of us watch our phones. I still don't get that one. We've become so much attracted to our phones that you'll see people walking into live traffic, staring into their phones, watching television programs streamed to them from wherever, out in the ethers. Others wreck cars, texting on their phones while driving. You'll see them driving down the street, driving with their knees, just crazy stuff. Yet we don't somehow realize just how distracted we have become because everyone else seems caught up on that same web. Try to convince them otherwise, and you become just another distraction. Yet, what did Yeshua say about the world? Let's drop anchor. Let's go to Matthew, the 10th chapter, the 34th verse. Matthew, the 10th chapter, 34th verse, where it says, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. I did not come to send peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." That one wasn't that hard. He probably kind of slept that one. That one was easy, from what I've seen anyway. "And a man's foes shall be those of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me, who is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take up his staros or stake and follow me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life shall lose it. And he who loves his life, who loses his life for my sake, shall find it. Which takes you back, and this distraction has been here for centuries. This isn't new, this isn't something. Oh, don't get too caught up in the fact that we're doing it electronically now. Back in the Stone Age, I'm sure there were glowing stones that they got excited about. There's always been something to distract us. And usually it takes us off kilter. It takes us away from what we should focus on. Moses looked at the entire enslaving of the Hebrew people by the Egyptian civilization and realized this is wrong. He knew it. Yeshua looked at the entire Hebrew social order around him. That's why he continually went at the Pharisees, because they had him going in a different direction. Yeshua looked at that social order that surrounded and abounded him and in Judea, and he realized and said it out loud. That might have been the first mistake, but it was part of the plan. He said, "This is wrong." Later on, Galilee, the astronomer, looked through his telescope and realized that the whole entire flat earth cosmology that was dominating his day, that eventually they drummed him out because he spoke this truth. He looked at this flat earth concept dominating his day and said, "Hey, this is wrong." Mohandas Gandhi looked at an entire society of imperialist oppressors and realized and made the mistake of speaking it out loud. This is wrong. Martin Luther King looked at the entire racist society assembled before him and realized and made the mistake of speaking it out loud. This is wrong. All of it wrong. Entirely wrong. Sometimes when balance has been entirely lost, Elohim lets a person know that everything around them is wrong. Entirely wrong. Yet, most of the world, having become ensnared in it, is unwilling to face the reality of their circumstances in totality. The fact that each and every single thing that they had ever been taught, they'd ever been told, ever been pushed through their minds, the prevailing worldview, if you will, of their present social order in their times, many people looked into it and found that it was utterly and totally wrong. Many knew this in their core, and it caused them much pain. The more real this fact becomes to you, the more pain it brings to you. Yet most of us, on some surface level, buy into these engineered distractions and just keep quiet about it. After all, we've seen what happens to those who speak out. We've seen it, so we don't want any of that. After all, what did it say that we live our whole lives living? We engineer our lives around the fact that we have this fear of death. and it causes us much pain. Having seen the result, as I said, though, of this speaking out against the prevailing prevarication, we know the reward for speaking the truth to those in power, and we want none of it. There's going to come a day after we realize what we're talking about today, that it won't matter, because you'll know that that decision of whether or not you live or die is not in their hands. It's in someone else's hands. But it takes a long time to get to that point. It takes a long time. But in the interim time, what are the rewards for speaking out? Ridicule. They'll laugh at you all day long. They'll talk about you. They want to argue about anything and everything you say. That happened long enough, comes point two, self-doubt. You start to doubt yourself. You're beginning, well, maybe it's me. Maybe there's something wrong with what I'm thinking. Maybe what I'm saying isn't right. Maybe they're right, which brings on mental confusion. Worst state to be in this situation. If you begin to realize you're right and stand strong, now comes persecution. First, by those around you who disagree, have to have that question every time. Something wrong. What did you say wrong this time? What did you do wrong this time? Then comes, after the persecution, excommunication. That's more organizational. Well, you don't agree, so you have to leave. And ultimately will come when Satan has full hold. Execution. Don't worry about that, though, because that'll be handled. Such are the rewards granted to those who would speak out against the status quo, no matter how right you are. You see, all interests have become vested in the status quo. At no point in Earth's sick, sordid history has it ever been otherwise. No matter what the folks with power said was true at any one time, you better go along with it or you're going to find yourself having some problems. If they wake up one morning and say, the world is flat, you better expect that if I run to the edge and jump off, I'm going to fall. You better at least pretend that, even if you've circled around and come back and came back to where you were and say, wow, this thing can't be flat, it must be round. But you better keep your mouth shut. Better keep your mouth shut. We're reaching that point where it's just going to get crazier and crazier, and the lies are going to get thicker and thicker, and everybody's going to just, oh yes, this must be true. Oh, the sky is green. The ground is blue. It's going to be like that. We're going to believe it. Or if you don't believe it, you better lie and pretend you do. You see, the hidden controllers are driven to maintain themselves in their status quo at any cost. The instinct for survival applies not only to beasts and bioorganisms, but to people, to businesses, governments, denominational religions, and philosophies. Indeed, to every mental structure known to us. And the pathway of this fallen demonic mindset is to use and abuse all those who quietly surrender to this structure and don't speak out. All of this in the service of their personal gain. In other words, if you stay quiet, you'll live. Which therefore maintains the status quo. And we buy into it, not realizing that we're being used. Well, we realize it, but we decided that that's a better choice than to die. We're used by Satan, and will eventually, and this is what most people don't realize, no matter how much you follow him, once he's decided that it's over, what's he going to do? Throw you away like garbage. Throw you away like garbage. But we're there hoping all the time for what he promises through these lies. What does he promise? Our title today, the prevaricant nature of more. The prevaricant nature of more. This is nothing new. We've surrendered to it throughout time. But at present, we surrender everything to it. Many have surrendered the Sabbath and these holy days to it. Why? Everybody's got a reason. Well, one reason is because most of the world says, oh, this stuff is done. We don't have to keep those days. That stuff is done away. You don't have to do that. So a lot of people bought into it. So they figure, well, hey, since I've got all this free time, what are they into now? Let's make more money. Let's own more stuff, phones, music instruments, cars. Let's do more things. Let's go more places. Let's eat more. You know, after eating more, we now promise ourselves that we would exercise more. And from the rumble, I would say some of those promises were as broken as the 10 Commandments. After spending so much, we promise ourselves we will save or invest more. How's that working for you? I won't say much, but it's not working out too well for me. But what we wind up doing, rather than investing more, what do? Start spending more. We see the people around us with more, so we decide we're going to start businesses. We're going to grow our businesses. We're going to get out there and we're going to drive Uber. We're going to drive Lyft. We're going to sell this. We're going to sell our stuff. We're going to have all these balls up in the air, but it doesn't work out. Doesn't always work out. But in doing all of these things, we have to buy more things to make these things work out. And each thing promises more convenience and allows us to make more. Or does it? Does anybody remember when they first brought computers into the workplace? Not you little guys. It'll good knows what's going to be like by the time you all start working. Remember when they first brought computers into the workplace and they promised that we would have more time off? Anybody remember that? Time off to do more of what we want to do. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to that? Let me tell you what happened to that. We got more work, more assignments, more computers, more stuff to fix, more problems, more of all of the stuff they told us we would get less and less and less of. Makes me think of what Yahweh told the Israelites when they were slothful about giving to the building of the temple. Let's go to Haggai, the first chapter, the 3rd verse. Haggai, the first chapter, the 3rd verse, where it says, "Then came the word of Yahweh by the hand of Haggai the prophet, saying, Do you have time, all of you, to dwell in your paneled houses? And this house," speaking of the temple, "is deserted. Now, therefore, has Yahweh of hosts said, Consider your ways. You have sown much and bring in little. You eat, but you are not filled. You drink, but you're not satisfied. You clothe yourselves, but you are not warm. And he that is a hireling receives his wages in a bag with holes. Thus has Yahweh of hosts said, Consider your ways." Think about it. But we do. We consider our ways. We consider them the only way to succeed. But at what cost? Not money. We're not talking about money here. We're talking about the true cost. If the cost is to abandon our children to a stranger's daycare center so that after the net of our taxes, we can, after working 40 or more hours a week, cover the minimum credit card payments on our toys. When what our children really want is to spend more time with us. Then perhaps, just perhaps, when you think about it, just maybe the cost is too great. And now you've got to start to think, well, maybe this whole system is wrong. You've got people that come up with this. I was gifted a bunch of the conspiracy books and such, but we start thinking about, wow, maybe there is something wrong here. There's something going on that we don't see clearly. How is it that we have to do all the work and others are in Cancun? You go on, what is that, the Wealth Channel, where you see how the rich have these beautiful homes, and then now we want more. But that's how it is. The cost is too great. But we're not allowed to think that way. If you think that way, that's heresy in this world. At that point, no matter if you're working 80 hours a week, if you want time off, oh, you're just lazy. You're just lazy if you think that way. But that's not how it works. That's how it should work. You should have time off. You should be able to do the things you want, but that's not what the handlers want. That's just what workers think. Of all the people I know, there are barely a handful who would honestly call themselves even remotely happy, content, or at peace with their lives as they're currently living them. And this goes across all areas. Anyone that's out there, every little statistical aberration that is there. You can look out there. You can be believers, heathens, atheists, working stiffs, doesn't matter. They all say they're overworked, underpaid, stressed out to the max. Just stressed out, trying to make this end meet that one. And it just doesn't happen often. Certainly doesn't happen often enough. We get tired at the end of the week, exhausted. Work week over. Wow, let's spend some time with the kids. We gas up the car, hitch the trailer up to it if you got one, yell at the fussy kids in the back who really don't want to go. They want to go with mommy, but they would rather be at home with mom and dad. But what do? We jump, throw everybody in the truck, in the car, and we don't have station wagons very much anymore, but you throw it in whatever we got. We fight the traffic, get out there in the little 15-year-old car, well, that's just me, breaks down in the middle of the road. It needs to be towed in for hundreds of dollars worth of repair. As we crawl even more exhausted back home, oh so well prepared after this exciting weekend with the family, we go home and rest to prepare for the week ahead. No one having enjoyed a full day of rest. By Sabbath, the first day or Sunday, you just basically just pulled your hair out for a weekend, and now you go right back to work, tired from the rest that you had all weekend. Having fun yet? Didn't think so. Didn't think so. The answer is most likely no. Because we have left Elohim out of our day-to-day lives. Notice what Yahweh inspired Isaiah to tell his people in his day. Let's go to Isaiah, the 55th chapter, the 2nd verse. Isaiah, the 55th chapter, the 2nd verse, where it says, "Why do you spend money for that which is not bread? And you labor for that which does not satisfy. Hearken diligently unto me, and eat you that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness." Are we at peace with our consumer-based capitalist society? Oh, the big businesses surely are. They're making all the money. But does this endless quest for more satisfy us? Bring us any peace of mind? It's my experience and what I have experienced in my lifetime and among those whom I know, the answer is a resounding no. The lie of more infuses each and every tiny crevice in this society in countless ways. Most of them we don't even notice because it's been that way for so long. This is intentional because many systems are most effective when they persuade us on levels that we are not even aware exist. Satan's most effective weapon is the lie that he does not exist. The idea that smart, well-educated people don't believe in a devil, this is superstition or a fairy tale, they say. Atheists say the same thing about Elohim. But again, the most effective persuasion is one that we're not aware of. Note how when among people, they all mirror each other's behavior to some extent. When you see someone yawn, everybody starts yawning. Somebody tells a joke, you may not even think it was funny, but everybody else, everyone laughs. because no one wants to be the odd man out. So you laugh even if you don't feel like laughing. Early on, Satan can't get in your hearts. Elohim can. But observation is an amazing tool to figure out how to manipulate people. Early on, television and the advertising industry and marketing experts realized this and figured it out and started doing something that we didn't catch on to, but it might be a dumb thing, but we don't even notice it. On comedy shows or sitcoms, situation comedies, they started adding in laugh tracks for their sitcoms. And in study after study, the viewing audience always perceives the laugh track enabled show to somehow be funnier than the ones without one. So what did happen within a few years? No matter how dumb the show was, they had a rousing laugh track going after the worst, weakest, dumbest jokes. And all of a sudden, ha ha ha, and you were doing the same thing. Yeah, you were, admit it. In an attempt to be wise, there was one little sitcom, about almost 12 years ago now. You little guys won't remember it, you weren't around. You weren't even the thoughts of a exciting weekend at the time, so don't even worry about it. It was a little show guy, a comedian, you may remember them. They were a team out of Chicago. What they broke, it was Tim and Tom. Anybody remember Tim and Tom? Didn't think so. Anybody remember Tim Reed? He was a comedian. Produced a little show called Frank's Place. It was kind of based on Cheers, very funny, really snappy dialogue. I would put it on a par with Frasier in terms of sharp dialogue. How many of you have watched Frasier? Great show, very funny, will keep you cracking up. Frank's Place was the same way. But Tim Reed says, let's not even use a laugh track. Let's not do that. He figured the laughs will stand on their own, and what's the big deal? We'll do this. No laugh track. Great show, in my opinion. Was canceled after one season. Critics loved it, but believed it was too geared to the colloquialisms and flavor of lower New Orleans. Anybody know anything about New Orleans know that? Well, let me put it a little bit different. Lower New Orleans, that would be the 9th Ward, which is pretty much still underwater. CBS pushed them to add a laugh track, but the producers refused. Cancel, gone. So much for going against the grain, so much for being different. Some accused it other ways, but fact of the matter is, if something's not making money in business, move on, next. Let's find something that makes money. That's how it works. Individualism is claimed to be a great thing in America. Oh, we're all rugged individualists. Are we really? No, that's not allowed. And yet, question is this. When you see someone lying, what do you feel like doing? Lie. You'll never admit that. You'll never own that. Keep it to yourself, but it's like that. Why? But you don't say it like, well, he did it. You know, it is like this. Wow, he got away with it. He got away with it. Maybe I can too. When you need it. Not at all times. Just when you need it. At 20 years old, 18, 19 years old, When you see an attractive member of the opposite sex drooling over a car, what do you feel like doing? Buying that car. Wow, I can get girls if I buy that car. You think that way, right? Of course not. No, you don't. When you have watched 30,000 acts of violence on TV before you're 12, when you're teased or bullied at school, what do you feel like doing? Acting out in violence? Of course not. We're all rugged individualists, right? Please do not continue to lie to yourselves, saying that these things do not have an effect on you, because they do. Now, you'll hear a lot of actors, singers, rappers, and entertainers lie and say that their scenes and the music that rings in your ears all day long has no effect on you. It doesn't bother you at all. And then you talk to young teenagers and they tell you how they listen to some rap music. I just feel like fighting. I don't know why. Psychologists do. But the entertainers say these things because it relieves them of any responsibility for the climate that their art has helped create. I didn't say created, I said helped create. The advertisers pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for the ability to control 1 minute of television programming in prime time. Now, question is, why do you think they call it programming? Hello. This year, next year it'll probably be more. They're probably working on that now as we get down to the fourth quarter of the economic year, if you will. This year, it costed $5 million for a 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl. So what you're telling, let me get this right. Let me make sure I got this right here. What you're telling me is that you spent $5 million for 30 seconds of time for people who don't care, are not influenced by it, will not listen to it, and will not go out and buy your light beer. Or whatever it is. That's what you're telling me, right? Nobody's going to do it. I just threw the money away. Throw it this way, please. We need a church building. We need some other stuff. We need things. But it's for them, not me. It's for us, not me. But if you're going to throw it away, I mean, you know, if you're, I'm not saying, I'm not begging. I'm just saying if you're going to throw it away, you know. But what you're saying is that you just threw it away because these people are rugged individualists and no one can tell them what to do and no one's ever going to convince them to do something by seeing it on television, right? Yet, we continue to insist that watching 8 hours a day cannot possibly have any effect at all on the individual, and certainly not on the society at large. Excuse me? Who controls the airwaves? Let's go to Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, the 1st verse. Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, the 1st verse. Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, the 1st verse, where it says, "And he has made you alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which in time past you walked according to the course of this world." In other words, theoretically, once you came into the truth of Elohim and this way of life, you turned the world off. 2, in in which in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the will of the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now works, present tense, in the sons of disobedience. After all, who controls this world presently? 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, the 3rd verse. 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, 3rd verse. But also, if our gospel is hidden, it is hidden to those being lost, theoretically, in which the God, small g, of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelieving ones, so that the light of the glorious gospel of Messiah, who is the image of Elohim, should not dawn on them. If we're jacked into the world's mainstream entertainment and news complex, we are totally, or at least largely, controlled by it. We have no idea just how controlled we are. And just at the idea that we might find out, notice the new trick. Everything has to be done quick. Everything's got to be fast. Somebody asks you a question, you open your mouth and you ask the question. If you don't answer the question in a half a second, I got time, move on, come on, answer the question. Everything has to be done fast. Everything has to be done with speed. And if it's not done within this amount of time, it doesn't count. Doesn't matter. Throw it away. You wasted. Why did you even do it? I needed it an hour ago. And we're under this pressure all day at work. And we bring it home with us and put our families under it who haven't maybe dealt with it or maybe have dealt with their own. Everyone, everything has to be done with speed, otherwise it doesn't count. We come home from work, want to eat fast. We're tired. Family of 4, can't cook, so we're going to go out to a restaurant. We're going to go out and get something to eat. Go get a Happy Meal. I use that as a base. That's roughly what, $4 a piece, something like that. Got a family of 4, that's $16. Got it fast though. Got it quick. But hadn't even gotten into that, how much. But $16. Now, back when things made sense, for $16, you could go out to a grocery store and buy enough stuff to prepare a very nice meal to sit down and eat at home. Can't do it now. Too tired from work, so let's go get the Happy Meal. Then we'll have more. More time, right? Wrong. You know what you'll have? Let me tell you what you'll have. More salt, more protein, more about that later, more saturated fat, more GMO, more hospital bills, more heart disease, and everything else. But the question you have to ask yourself at this point in this country is it really protein? You really dig deep enough, you have to ask yourself, is it even food? You see, if it's soy in meat-saturated America, soy, oh, well, we think it's not important because that's what we've been told. At least that's what they tell us. I mean, worldwide, however, soy provides the majority of protein for the people on this earth. One company presently controls 90% of all worldwide soybean production. Does anyone know who it is? Exactly. Their published official business plan calls for more. Why? Because by the end of 2017, they plan to control 100% of all soy production worldwide. Our government protected multinational corporation. This one measured its success solely on the basis of profit. Controlling the majority source of protein for the entire human race, I say they're headed in that direction pretty fast. We like fast, if you remember. Do you know that this is happening? No, we don't, most of us. Many just don't care because the prince tells them that this is a conspiracy theory anyway, so why are we even listening to it? After all, remember, he doesn't exist. Many will quickly ask you, are you sure that's true? I assure you it is. Even if you are okay with it, what about your children? If you won't want to think that far ahead, what about your grandchildren? What about their children? Read a little something for you. GMO food studies project that those who eat GMO or genetically modified food organisms will experience 100% infertility within 3 generations. Got that from Dr. Mercola, if you know who that is. Dr. Mercola and other doctors post proof on the internet of these things and other scientific studies they've done with GMO foods. They found and linked GMO foods to sterility, even in the eaters. Birth defects in the eaters. Higher infant death rates. Our infant mortality rate is on a par with a lot of sub-Saharan countries that have none of the medical miracles, that's what they call them, that we have here. And other critical illnesses. We know what the problem is. We've known what the problem is for a very long time. Yet as of yesterday, there are 39 countries that have banned GMO crops. And let's see if I can do this fast. Azerbaijan, Austria, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Moldova, the Netherlands, Northern Ireland, they're split if you call, Norway, Poland, Russia, Scotland, Serbia, Slovenia, Switzerland, Ukraine, Wales, Belize, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, Bhutan, Kyrgyzstan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Algeria, Madagascar. Who's not on that list? Hello. The United States refuses to even label GMO foods in our grocery stores because they've placed money over human lives. Why? More. This is the essence of our stock markets and their greedy partners, the banks and corporations. All of these are part of a system dedicated and evaluated based solely on the basis of profit margin and growth. Within this growing monster, humanity can't be considered. After all, the one who runs the world, his plan is to do what anyway? Kill us all. Let them do it. I don't feel like it. They're more effective at it than I am. Let them do it themselves. This machine that we've built cannot afford to consider anything other than the bottom line and the profit margin. So all they care about is more, more, more. It must consume or eliminate anything that stands in its way. What's that sound like? We call it business. We were given a piece of it. Now we get into how much you're bought into it. We were given a piece of it to justify its existence in the mind of we little guys, those little 401ks that we sit on, our retirement funds, which make us feel that the monster is helpful to us. You'll hear people all the time, when the market grows, we grow. Did it feel like it last weekend? Didn't think so. We were given this perk only because such business can only be sustained by a populace addicted to this opiate of more. Our investments guarantee that we will remain addicted to this lie of more. Our continual purchases and attempts to keep up with the Joneses keep us in more and more debt. We use money we do not have, called credit, to buy DVDs, MP4s, files, electronic games, gaming systems, movies, entertainment, fashion, hair products, more hair products, even more hair products. Am I hurting anybody's feeling? More hair products. And all that is spent that we might have what? More. Debt is at an all-time high. The average American owes $16,000 in debt. And that is not including mortgage payments or college loans. The banks, the stores, the markets, they all position themselves as benign providers. But should the markets collapse, if the economic system collapses, what are they going to pay with? What are they going to pay with? What are they going to pay with? There's only a few things that are worth anything in this world right now if the money is gone. Gold, silver, land, food that's on the land, and one more thing. What did it say in Revelation 18 that's talked about it? Human souls, slaves. The country is set up in such a way that if it ever defaults on anything, they will simply allow us to work for whoever we owe until we work, till we pay it off. It's in the Constitution, folks. They just didn't tell you that. Check it out for yourselves. If this whole thing falls, we would instantly become chattel slaves to our debtors. And the way things are set up right now, guess who that debtor is going to be? The ruler of the coming world system. Who's that? Oh, that's right. He doesn't exist. there were some little warnings we got in the Bible, but we kind of ignored them once they came with those nice 5% interest rates that jumped to 30 as soon as you made your first purchase. Yeah, I know about that. I got a couple of them myself. Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, 7th verse. He tried to warn us. We didn't listen. Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, the 7th verse, where it says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs, the 29th chapter, the 7th verse. The righteous considers the cause of the poor, but the wicked do not understand wisdom. Please, if nothing else, understand that they care nothing about us except that we continue to consume their goods. It keeps them rich. And that means ultimately they have consumed us. And that done with the support of the government. But remember, we have wanted these things all the way back to 1 Samuel 8. We won't go there. We don't have time. But we know what happened there. We want a king. We want to do what they do. We've wanted these things, and we have always voted and allowed for this government, thus turning our backs on Elohim. So in a way, we set ourselves up for this abuse. Yet, because of all of the elapsed time, we believe that what happens in this world is totally separate from our faith. It is not. This is a lifestyle, as we've heard so many times. This isn't a religion. I don't believe in religion. When you break that word down, you'll understand why. Return to liege or slavery. That's what it really means. Break it up. If you go find it, it says something about, people of different faiths and everything. Break the word down in its component parts. Return. Legion. The active point of slavery. Now, if you're a slave to God, if you're a slave to Elohim, you're fine. But by then you realize that that's not a religion. That is a way of life. So you got to make a difference. You got to make a difference. Because it doesn't have to be that way. What we have to do is this. We must return to prayer. We must learn to only purchase what we have the funds for. We must use credit as little as possible, and only for those things that are so big that you got to have it. You got a house already, so if you got something that breaks down, you got to fix it. Okay, you got to do that. You got something problem with your car? Yeah, you got to do that. All the rest of that stuff, maybe you don't need it. Use credit as little as possible, and remember that no matter how much we have purchased, question, when's the last time you went to a funeral? When's the last time you went to a funeral? When you went, when they were driving off and they had the hearse there and the body was in the back, did you see anywhere on that hearse for luggage? See a luggage rack? Didn't think so. Bottom line, you can't take it with you. Can't take it with you. We must live for Elohim. This doesn't require us to be better than anyone. Just be the best that we can be. It doesn't require that we have more. Matter of fact, in the final analysis, you have less. We'll get to that. Forget about keeping up with the Joneses. Let you in on a little something here. They're broke too. They're broke too. For the same reasons. They were watching this same stuff on TV. If I'm hitting anybody in the face, I'm sorry, just duck. You watched HGTV, you sat up and said, oh, we got to paint every room in the house. You watched QVC, I want this, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. They came on with the car with the pretty girl. Oh, wow, I want the car. Maybe she'll come with it. Next thing you know, you was broke, just like the Joneses. The antidote to more is less. When Yeshua came, notice this. John the Baptist gave us an example of that less concept, and he gave us an example of the right kind of more. John, the third chapter, the 30th verse. John, the 3rd chapter, the 30th verse. Speaking of himself in conjunction or in opposition, not in opposition because they were on the same team, but he's showing his comparison between him and Yeshua the Messiah. He said, he must increase, but I must decrease. Having enough to fulfill your obligations is enough. You are in no contest with anyone else for things, because we've already seen there's going to be no split place for your iPad or your iPhone or your guitar or your nice new bass or your whatever on that casket, in that hearse. There's going to be no room for it. We're in no contest with anyone else for stuff. If you are, perhaps you're not attached properly to your faith, and your spirit just might be weakening, might be time to start trying to strengthen it. The only antidote to vanity and more, I think we had it on our shirts last year, the death of self. As Yeshua taught us on the stake, Luke, the 23rd chapter, the 44th verse. Luke, the 23rd chapter, the 44th verse, where it says, and it was about the 6th hour, and there was a darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in the middle. And crying with a loud voice, Yeshua said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And when he had said this, he breathed out the spirit. In other words, he breathed his last. And when the centurion saw what had been done, he glorified Elohim, saying, truly, this man was righteous. John was martyred. Yeshua was martyred. To the world, they were nothing. In order to make it into the kingdom of God, we must also become nothing to this world. This less is indeed more, but to Elohim. For only through this nothingness of complete surrender to Elohim can we become not nothing, not nothingness, but infinity. We become infinite. Our lives do not end. If you seek to save your life, you will lose it. But lose your life, and you will gain it eternally. You will gain it infinitely. You will gain back more stuff than you ever left off the end of that hearse. This will overcome the prevaricant nature of ego and more. And we all will become so much more for eternity in the kingdom of Elohim. God bless you all.